Yesterday was Donald Trump's last full day in office. The last 4 years have been, well, never boring. 4 years ago, I was painting Jason's master bedroom and bath, and he was hatching the idea that became blue collar logic. I hardly even knew the guy. He tricked me into this. But we've been privileged to serve here in whatever way we could. We've made hundreds of videos, and personally, I've thrown away as many scripts as I've used. I think of us as video columnists. I can tell you that coming up with enough good ideas to make 10 or 12 videos a month is a heavy lift. There are a lot of mornings that I stare at the word processor and I think, I got nothing. This is when I bring up the old search engine and type in these words, latest Trump news, or if I'm feeling frisky, latest Trump outrage. This has never failed to yield at least something to write about. But tomorrow, the Trump presidency is over, and I, like every other columnist, will have to dig a little deeper. Trump hate has been a bottomless well of material, both for those who hate him and for those of us who have defended him. All of that is coming to an end, and on the left, there's a growing feeling of anxiety. What will left-wing media do now? Their entire business model has been dependent on the president giving them something that they can offer up as each day's existential threat. After a little editing. One dude has been the source of it all, the golden-haired goose. But they got a little too good at the propaganda game, and now that goose has been killed and cooked and eaten. Now what will they talk about? What will they live for? It seems to me that Trump derangement syndrome is about to give way to something new. Trump withdrawal syndrome. Anything that makes you feel good can be addictive. This is called the pleasure principle. Generally speaking, stuff that feels good is also good for your survival. Being warm and toasty by the fire feels better than freezing to death in a snowbank. Eating feels better than starving to death. And if mating didn't feel better than not mating, you and I wouldn't be here to have this conversation. The human brain wants to encourage pro-survival behavior. We are wired to form pro-survival habits. You don't need a 12-step group to become an addict because booze and drugs feel good. Obviously, it's not a perfect system. Hatred is also addictive. Think about it. Hatred is just a long-term version of anger. If your tribe lives within striking distance of another tribe that wants you dead, you need to have instant access to anger. When those bastards come screaming over the hill, jabbing the sky with their spears, you have 30 seconds to get as pumped up as they are. People who could hate lived long enough to pass on their genes. I'm going to need another metaphor here, so bear with me. Think of hatred as anger's engine sitting at an idle. If you already hate that enemy, getting revved up into a murderous rage is instantaneous. You don't have to get started and get warmed up every time. You just kick the throttle and boom, pure adrenaline. Feels good, doesn't it? 100% high-test fuel. That feels powerful, which is pleasurable. And anything pleasurable enough is addictive. That's what Trump derangement syndrome is. The engine at an idle waiting to be goosed by the latest Trump outrage. The Democrats and their media hacks used long-form stuff like Russian collusion and impeachment, that would be the first impeachment, to keep the hatred engine running just at a comfortable idle. People can't rage every day, but they can hate every day, and then rage whenever they get the directive. Last week, when the House impeached Trump, my progressive friends were suddenly raging again. A week from the end, you'd think they'd be calming down. But no, they were triggered into another frenzy of hatred. That's the drug that CNN is peddling. That's what MSNBC and the NYT and the DNC are handing out. First dose is on the house. Enjoy. The left usually has a bunch of enemies scattered all across the culture. But in the last 4 years, they've boiled it all down to one big orange target. So much easier to focus on. And for every left-winger in America, the next hate fix was as easy to find as it was for Jason and me to find a topic. Just open up the Google and type in the words, and you're up and running at a nice hatred cruising speed. The latest Trump outrage, a cheap drug readily available until today. There's an old saying from the cocaine-drenched 80s, don't get high on your own supply. Hey, Tony Montana did pretty well until he started snorting lines at the disco. Next thing you know, he's got a mountain of blow on his desk and a machine gun in his hands. Cynical Democratic operatives know the motivational power of hatred. They know that it's addictive and how to cook the product. But over the years, as the mainstream media became 99% Democratic, the Pelosi's and Schumers of the world realized that they had a massive distribution network. Chuck and Nancy are the drug lords. The press is the pound-at-a-time mid-level dealer. And your progressive sister-in-law? She's the pusher on the corner. All of those pretty people in the big blue cities with their electric cars and idealistic dreams, they all went full junkie. And a daily dose of Trump was their spoon and flame, their pipe and needle. Junkies are not known for their long-term strategic thinking. Is that fair to say? Whether we're talking about the meth heads camped by the freeway in Seattle or an adrenaline junkie like Evel Knievel. Jump the fountain at Caesar's Palace? I can't think of any reason why not. Some things were just never going to end well. By this time next week, the Trump presidency will be headed for the history books, and CNN will be headed for bankruptcy. What will they have to talk about every night? Mitch McConnell? Oh yeah, that's a ratings bonanza. Somehow I don't see McConnell derangement syndrome packing much of an adrenaline punch. Sure, they beat Fox a week ago, but they had to provoke a riot in the Capitol to do it. Call it a last hurrah for the haters and their drug dealers. It's going to be hard to milk much hostility out of the Senate impeachment trial if that happens. Not with Trump gone and old Joe shuffling through the West Wing in his bathrobe. They'll try, and progressives will respond a bit, but after that, full-on withdrawal symptoms. The party's over, kids. You got high on your own supply and you killed your connection. Now you'll have to go back to calling decent people racist and pretending that gender is an invention of the patriarchy. But none of this will satisfy you anymore. Turns out that when you've turned one easy target into the absolute embodiment of Satan, chasing minor demons across the political landscape is hard to get it up for. Prepare for boring news every day. If you're not sick of hearing about the pandemic, you will be soon. This will be the only Trump-era story that they'll want to talk about. Everything else that happened on his watch was too, awesome. Of course, for a while, all news stories on CNN will include an obligatory reference to Trump just for entertainment purposes, like the recovering addict at the Narcotics Anonymous meeting spicing up a dull monologue with a dramatic OD story. I died 5 times. It'll take a while for the Trump hate junkies to get back on their feet. In AA, they tell you that the first step is to admit that you have a problem and humbly ask for help. Yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon. I give Nancy Pelosi about 6 months before her tank runs dry, before she wakes up in her mansion and can't for the life of her remember what she thought she stood for. Did I really spend the twilight of my career spitting out slander and propaganda? Maybe in the distance, she'll hear a reedy Canadian voice singing a dirge and not know if it's real or just another phantom. I've seen the needle and the damage done, a little part of it in every one, but every junkie's like a setting sun. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.